I wanted to provide just a little bit of background on some of the activities to date with the Climate Action Plan. I presented an informational report to the City Council on February 25th, and at that point, we launched the draft action plan. We did a fair amount of public outreach, including posting on our website, social media, direct emails, and we also did direct outreach to all of our committees and commissions. So pretty much a lot of outreach so that people would know that we launched the Climate Action Plan. And comments will be due by May 29th. And we've extended this by a month due to COVID-19. And we'll talk more about that. The intent of this presentation is to introduce you and provide an overview of the draft Climate Action Plan. It's basically the same presentation provided to the City Council in February. It's the same presentation that I would have provided in person. We did have a public informational workshop scheduled, as well as with our committees and commissions. So it's basically the same presentation you would have received in person. The next steps and timeline will be described at the end of this presentation. So let's talk about climate change and some background. The challenge of climate change is unprecedented. The Earth's climate system is being destabilized in response to elevated levels of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, primarily from the combustion of fossil fuels for energy use. These greenhouse gas emissions include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and 3 human-made gases, including hydrofluorocarbons, pure fluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. The chart at the bottom shows these particular greenhouse gases in 2017. Why address climate change? Climate change refers to all aspects of climate, including disruptions to weather patterns, including the shrinking of glaciers, accelerated sea level rise, more intense heat waves, shifts in animal and plant ranges, as well as changes in the timing of plant reproduction. Climate change is affecting land and water resources, transportation, and human health and welfare across the United States, as well as around the world. Over the past 50 years, California, Western Northern America, and other areas have all experienced warmer winter and spring temperatures, reduced spring snow levels, and earlier snowpack melt, as well as increased wildfires. At sea level in the San Francisco Bay has risen about 8 inches over the past 100 years, and the projections include 14 inches of sea level rise by 2050 and 40 to 55 inches by the year 2100. Avoiding the most severe climate system outcomes will require preventing average global temperature from rising more than 2 degrees Celsius, and this is relative to pre-industrial levels, with the goal of limiting the warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. These are the levels that were agreed upon and ratified at the 2016 Paris Climate Agreement. Atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide need to peak below 400 to 450 parts per million and stabilize in the long term around today's levels. In 2018, the global atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide passed 407 parts per million. Global greenhouse gas emissions will need to be reduced at least 5% below 2010 levels by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. So why do a climate action plan? Local level solutions can reduce emissions, improve energy efficiencies, promote economic development, and improve the overall quality of life for our community. By adopting a climate action plan, the city is committing to take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The city's environmental programs and other city activities have helped to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The environmental programs focus on reducing waste, conserving water, saving energy, and preventing water pollution for our residents, our businesses, schools, and city facilities and operations. These activities, partial activities, include installing and expanding electric vehicle charging stations, joining Peninsula Clean Energy, and opting for 100% renewable energy for our city facilities, participating in the Peninsula SunShare Solar and Electric Vehicle Program, and implementing the 2012 Clean Energy Program for our city operations, along with other programs. The environmental program's key components include outreach, education, hands-on assistance, and leading by example. I want to point out the picture in the top left, and that is our single-use carry-out ordinance that was adopted by the City Council at that time in 2012. Millbrae was the first city to adopt that ordinance. Similar, in 2008, the city adopted the Sustainable Food Serviceware Ordinance that prohibits polystyrene foodware. And once again, we were the first in the county and leading by example. I also want to point out the picture in the bottom right. That's from one of our Arbor and Earth Day events where we plant trees and do a city litter cleanup. I want to give a little more background. In 2007, the City Council passed 2 climate protection resolutions. One was a U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, and this was part of the Cool Cities campaign. The other was ICLEI's Cities for Climate Protection campaign. In 2009, the City Council adopted greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets of 15% below 2005 levels by 2020 and 80% below 2005 levels by 2050. 2005 being the base year for the city's greenhouse gas emissions. The city has been recognized by the Institute for Local Government's Beacon program for its efforts to reduce greenhouse gases and won several awards in 2015 and in 2016, and the city will expect to receive more this fall. A draft climate action plan was created to establish policies, to set targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and to outline measures to meet these targets. Staff has been working with the County of San Mateo Office of Sustainability, which administers the Regionally Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite program, known as RICAPS. And this is in collaboration with and funded by CCAG, the City County Association of Governments. RICAPS has helped tremendously along the way with helping with the draft climate action plan and as well as doing our greenhouse gas inventories, which have been finalized through 2015. The 2016 and 2017 inventories are being finalized, but I'm happy to share some preliminary emissions reduction targets, or actually goals. And so basically what we're finding is that the city has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by 19% for 2017. So once again, 2005 is the base year in which all of our inventories are compared to, so that we know how much our greenhouse gases have been reduced. Some of the results with the 2017 inventory show that electricity emissions were reduced by 62% between 2015 and 2017. While this is largely due to the implementation of Peninsula Clean Energy using renewable energy and carbon-free sources, it's also due to all the great energy conservation that you're doing, that our businesses are doing, and the results are showing. I also wanted to share that with the transportation emissions, they were reduced by 13% between 2015 and 2017. This had to do with reduced vehicle miles traveled, as well as the use of alternative vehicles like hybrids and electric cars. So everything makes a difference. So I wanted to share those preliminary results with you. This chart shows the breakdown of Millbrae's baseline greenhouse gas emissions in 2005. I had mentioned that is the year that all of our future inventories will be compared to, so we know how much we have reduced. You can see that transportation is a large part, over 50% of all of the emissions to date, or in that year. The second largest is due to building energy use for both residential and commercial usage. The draft climate action plan sets a new greenhouse gas reduction target of 49% 2005 levels by 2030, with an interim target of 32% below 2005 levels by 2025. I wanted to point out that that 49% below 2005 by 2030 is an SB 32 goal. And also mention, when I had said that we had reduced by 19%, we had surpassed the City Council's goals of 50% reduction by 2020, just to show that we're in line, and a lot more activities will help meet these future targets. A prioritized list of actions are included in the draft climate action plan. I will refer to it as a CAP on and off as well, just so you know, are included to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with a mix of voluntary strategies and mandatory policies. Many strategies are already in place and others are being newly proposed. The CAP builds off of some of our existing programs, and there are a total of 42 measures in the draft climate action plan, 24 existing, some of them being expanded, and 18 new measures. Several emissions reductions will come from state and countywide transportation and building strategies. The CAP includes background on climate change, baseline inventory emissions, emissions targets, local efforts, greenhouse gas reduction measures, implementation, and monitoring. Basically, the CAP provides a roadmap for the city to reduce greenhouse gases based on emissions in various sectors. The CAP is organized by these sectors, which I'll mention in a minute, and includes measures for community and municipal activities within each of these sectors. So if you look at the draft climate action plan, you will see that the community measures are mentioned first, and below that are municipal measures. The categories or the emission sectors are energy, and that includes water conservation, transportation and land use, solid waste, and then there's the all sectors category, the green business program. And this touches upon all the other sectors. And next we'll get into each of these sectors. I'm just going to highlight a few measures within each of these sectors, starting with energy for residential and commercial energy. One of the measures includes starting a voluntary program to encourage minimum energy efficiency and water efficiency standards at the time of a building sale and transitioning to a mandatory energy conservation ordinance over time, continuing to promote participation in residential and commercial energy efficiency programs, encouraging electric panel and equipment upgrades for electrification through incentive and education programs. Some of these programs are currently offered and others will be building over time, including for Peninsula Clean Energy, Bay REN, and that's a Bay Regional Energy Network, and PG&E. We'll continue promoting rebates for water efficient appliances and fixtures and implement a residential tree planting program. Next is transportation and land use sector, increasing electric vehicle ownership through the expansion of electric vehicle charging infrastructure at both public and private facilities, continuing our smart growth policy that prioritizes infill, higher density, and transportation-oriented and mixed-use development, creating an efficient fleet policy for our municipal operations, and accommodating shared electric bikes and scooters that provide last-mile solutions. That's getting people from our transportation hub, home, and back, the last mile solution. Next is our solid waste category, and that includes increasing participation in recycling programs and weekly collection of recyclables and organic waste to achieve 85% diversion, implementing a zero waste policy for our city operations, and revising the municipal operations administrative standard procedures for the environmental policy to strengthen our sustainable purchasing procedures. The last sector is the green business program, and this allows businesses to brand themselves as green by actually implementing sustainable practices. In Millbrae, we have 6 certified green businesses, and this includes the City of Millbrae and the library, and we are trying to lead by example. And it's a very stringent process, and we hope to get more businesses certified. The Climate Action Plan outlines a path to reducing greenhouse gas emissions from 2005 levels by 47% for energy emissions, 58% for transportation emissions, and 90% for solid waste emissions. The measures included in the CAP were selected based on city resources, including staffing capabilities, budget, and population, among other considerations. The CAP is a living document that will be updated as new technologies and programs emerge. This is a new slide I wanted to share with you, and this shows greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, California, and San Mateo County as a comparison. So I wanted to pick out a couple sectors within these charts. So let's look at electricity. That's the yellow portion of the charts. In the United States, electricity represented 31%, 21% for California, and 14% for San Mateo County. Let's look at transportation. That's the blue portion. US equals 26%, 38% in California, and 58% in San Mateo County. And so I just wanted to show how in San Mateo County, some of the efforts and programs are making a difference. You can see that, as an example, electricity, which we pointed out, is 14%. This is largely due to Peninsula Clean Energy, as well as all of the incentive programs and everything that everyone is doing to conserve energy. It means transportation sector grew a little, but there are programs in place that will help reduce emissions in all of these different sectors. And The draft cap, I just wanted to mention, the draft cap right now has a chart of the United States. One of the comments that we received from a public member, a resident in Millbrae, was to show California because it shows what we're doing. And fortunately, I was able to get the help of the county and get the San Mateo County chart. They don't represent all the same years, but we will fine tune this and include this in the cap so that we have a comparison of what's going on regionally, statewide, and nationally. I just wanted to share that with you. I wanted to briefly touch upon adaptation planning. The measures in the Climate Action Plan help to reduce and stabilize the current greenhouse gases, which is considered a mitigation effort. Climate adaptation involves taking actions to manage risks from climate impacts, to protect communities, and strengthen the resilience of the economy. So it's adapting to what has already been occurring with climate change and reducing our community's vulnerabilities. The city has taken action to assess sea level rise and is implementing green infrastructure projects, and we will continue to develop and implement these strategies. I wanted to point out the pictures at the bottom, and this is a recently implemented green infrastructure project that's located near Taylor Middle School. Green infrastructure is a great resilient measure that helps to reduce flooding. It helps to prevent pollution from getting into our waterway, going down, all the floodwaters going down the storm drains, in our creeks, and out to the bay. It helps to capture that as well as infiltrate the pollutants. It helps to mitigate heat island effect as well as provide climate resiliency. So we will look forward to having more of these in Millbrae, and when you're able to, check out this project near Taylor Middle School. Let's talk about our current activities and next steps. We'll continue conducting public outreach to gain community input by the end of this month. I had mentioned that the public comments are due by May 29th, and this was extended due to COVID-19. We will incorporate these comments into the CAP and finalize it. We'll then provide a report on the final climate action to the Planning Commission early July prior to performing CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. And the reason that we're doing this is to benefit future development so that they can streamline off of the Climate Action Plan. Our original plan was to have the CAP adopted with a general plan and to go through its environmental process. But due to changes in timing of these two documents and the CAP is moving, we're having CEQA performed so that our future developments will have that benefit to streamline off of the CAP. This brings us into early November. It's about a 3-4 month process. The plan is to go to the City Council in early November for the first reading, November 11th, and for adoption on November 24th. I wanted to mention again that the public comments are due by May 29th to myself at sreider, and in case you're on the phone and you don't have a screen, that's sreider@ci.millbrae.ca.us. And to access the draft cap, there's a couple of ways you can navigate to get it on the city's website. One, under Departments and Services, and go to Public Works, and you will see a link to the Climate Action Plan, and also through the Sustainable Millbrae page, which you can also find under Departments and Services. So either way, you can do a search, you will find the draft Climate Action Plan, and there's a link to it. Before we answer questions, I wanted to point out some of the resources we have on the Sustainable Millbrae page, including 10 steps to reduce your carbon footprint, which is also included in the Climate Action Plan. And it has ideas, things that we can do in our everyday lives to reduce greenhouse gases, from shopping locally like at a farmer's market, taking public transportation when we can do that, reducing waste, reducing junk mail, conserving energy. So take a look at that. Also on the Sustainable Millbrae page is the link to our recycling and waste prevention program, and there's some resources on that. And there's a link for our water resources conservation program. Those are also right under Public Works. You can find it that way, and where to dispose of household hazardous waste. So I hope you can take the time and take a look at that. I'm going to scroll down. This is the last slide. I'll keep this up so that you can look in case you haven't seen the Climate Action Plan, where you can find it, when the comments are due, as well as my email address.